as we kind of saw him we met him, and then when they were telling him like it's time to go, he turns and he's like, "I'm not the Mark Hamill you're looking for."
How about you in the turtle shirt?
So part of Batman or the auxiliary characters, you always have like a long history of like secondary, tertiary characters, and you've got guys like Lincoln March or the Victim Syndicate or the First Victim, and you close up the story but not necessarily the character. Is it kind of difficult to pass those on to another writer? And then also on things like that, are there people that you wish someone else would pick up?
Oh yeah, no, I mean like it's that's a great question. Honestly, I sort of see a metaphor I use a lot is just the toy box. Like DC kind of letting us use the toy box. The amazing thing about working on Justice League books is now we get all the toy boxes, not just the Gotham toy box. But one of the great honors of that is like you can take a character out of the toy box, change him a bit, and put him back in. And I think that I hope that the version of Clayface that I worked on influences future writers on Clayface. And then when it's a brand new character, or a group of characters like the Victim Syndicate, I came up with the Victim Syndicate to answer a very specific question, to tell a very specific type of story with Batman, which is sort of facing the unintended consequences of his war on crime. Now, can I imagine a world where somebody pulls them out of the toy box and does a story I don't like with them? Of course I can. But I hope that they do. One of the big things that I did in my run on Detective, a character who is a fairly minor '90s Bat villain called the General, Ulysses Armstrong. That's a character who always stood out to me in the original Chuck Dixon Detective comics that introduced him, and then also in the Chuck Dixon Robin series where he became a kind of antagonist to Tim Drake, and reintroducing him and kind of stripping him back down to basics and then throwing him back at the Bat family was really re-energizing, and I do hope that somebody takes characters that I have put into the toy box and uses them into the future. The big question that Marguerite Bennett and I have right now is they just did the big announcement about how Batwoman's going to show up in the Arrowverse, the live-action TV shows, and we're like, oh, is this going to be the more military side of Batwoman that we've been covering, or is this the more supernatural side of Batwoman that was kind of and it's exciting to sort of find out, am I going to see the colony on the big screen? That would be amazing. They also said in the same interview that they might be doing Mother, the villain that we created for Batman and Robin its run, which would also be amazing. It's exciting to put things into the toy box. Yes, there's always a chance that doesn't go well, but it's also, that's the world we're in. That's once you let them go into this world, it's up, if other people pick them up and do a story that you really love and care for, then that means that you did the groundwork to actually make that the definitive version of the character. And if you didn't, then you gave them the pieces to hopefully find the definitive version of the character that you may not have gotten to yourself.
Real quick, is there someone that you wanted the First Victim to be, or are you just that's not my fault, that's what someone else worked on?
I never saw the identity of the First Victim as something that was it's more powerful if you don't know who they are.
That's one of the things I love about Batman is that there are all these Achilles heels that you don't realize until you start writing him. Superman's the same. Superman, I feel everyone is sort of I was walking with it was somebody yesterday, it was one of the con helpers at Orlando, and they were I can't find my way to Superman, he always does the right thing. And you're writing him and you're he never knows what the right thing is. There's just totally nobody with his power set and it's so interesting. And Batman is similar, where you give him ambiguity or a case he can't solve in some way, there's nothing. That's the Owls to me, was always, it says the whole city is a mystery you won't solve, the thing you think you know the best. And that's life. You know what I mean? It's the things you think you know, a lot of the times, you have to realize change and you don't. And that idea, I love that when he pitched that too, that, it's interesting, their weaknesses. When you start writing them, you see things that you didn't otherwise from the outside.
Great. Your stuff's been great since Wizards Crash Course.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and talking about Scott talking about him drawing Sinestro looking like himself. If you saw Women Are Not Men in Drag, where he dressed himself in drag and that, you would know he drew it's all himself.
Right.
But it's been great, man.
Oh, thank you very much, man. He's really dying for.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My question is, you guys have done a lot of comics, so if you were to do a collaboration, what would it be between a horror movie franchise, a sci-fi franchise, or a video game franchise?
Do you mean like which thing would we work on if we hit it outside of comics, or?
Like you could
Video game
you could fuse it with your superheroes, is what I'm saying. Like you.
With superheroes.
Oh, fusion. Oh, I don't know.
I think both of, like, Scott and I both have, like, really strong roots in horror, and I know that that's, like, when we get into kind of geeky conversations about storytelling, it tends to be because we just saw a horror movie and we were really impressed by it or really not impressed by it. That's sort of where, like, I don't know, like, I did my, like college thesis on, like, horror storytelling. So that's always what, like, Justice League Dark is a horror comic. But
It is. Yeah, I love horror. I think for me, fusion, I don't know. I mean, I think we try that a lot to try. I mean, if you're talking about literal, like, do I want to see like Pac-Man versus Jason? I would always totally write that. Yes. Like, that's sort of like what's on the other side of the wall, Marvel. I would be like, wow, Freddy Krueger versus Mario. That'd be so sad. So sad. All the coins just falling back. But yeah, no, I mean, one of the great things about writing comics is, and I would say this if there are aspiring writers out there, is that nowadays there's this incredible synthesis between comics and video games and movies and TV, all of it. And once you start in one field, those doors start opening. So there's a lot of offers to, or at least avenues to start, that are very welcoming about doing those kinds of things. But I think we're all just really focused right now in print and comics.
So, 2 questions, so I can knock them out of the way. I know it's like a Batman panel, but do you have an end for American Vampire?
I do.
And then for Greg, you've been posting a lot of stuff on Twitter, like pictures of drawings. It looks like Swamp Thing. I don't know what that is, or not. It looks like it, so maybe you can talk about it.
I will talk about it. I'll let you.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, American Vampire. We were going to end it this year, but then they're relaunching Vertigo, is that they showed at the publishers meeting at the end of 2018 into 2019. So they asked if we would be part of that. So we have the 2 arcs that really sum up the rest of the 70s into the present day that we've been planning to do for a long time, that we're going to do once Vertigo relaunches. Thanks. So we're really excited about it. So yeah, so you'll see it coming up. It was a matter of timing, and they didn't want us to come out in a dead zone between when they're sort of winding down what Vertigo is and what it's going to be.
All right, so I have Twitter and Instagram followers here at all? Yeah. All right. So then you've seen a lot of Swamp Thing pieces, and all right. So what that is I got to draw Swamp Thing in metal for a page, I think, but it was a good page. It was a big page, big shot of one, and I had so much fun that I said to Dan DiDio, I said, listen, I really want to draw, a Swamp Thing book, and he says, we'll get together. We'll talk. We'll go out to dinner together. So we got out to dinner together. And he tells me first how much he loves me, and he will give me anything that I ask for. And listen, okay? Let's be serious.
He did an impression yesterday at the panel with Dan, and it was so funny. They sounded exactly like him. And Dan started laughing, and then he started laughing like that.
So anyway, so Dan gives me this big Wonder Woman pitch. He goes, I'll give you the Swamp Thing, I'll give you anything you want, but I really see you doing like a Wonder Woman story, And initially I was intimidated by Wonder Woman because, she needs to be handled in a very specific way, and I had a lot of stress about it initially, and I would bounce it off my wife because, I won't go into the thing about that. She needs to be very special. And so, but after drawing her so much in metal, I go, Okay, Wonder Woman. I could totally see Wonder Woman. I go, but you gotta let me, scratch that itch somehow, let me do some covers or something for Swamp Thing. He goes, well, I don't have a Swamp Thing book, but if you do some covers, I'll make a Swamp Thing book for your covers. So I go, all right, fair enough. So I do my first Swamp Thing cover, and I hand it, and he goes, I need you to do a Swamp Thing book. That was it. Right away, Wonder Woman disappeared, and so he wants me to do a Swamp Thing book, and so I was just talking to him again because I was poking about it because that was funny to me that you switched full circle on me, and he goes, the reason is I thought Scott really has a great grasp on Wonder Woman. He's got a great story, and I think he really gets the character. And but Scott has a great Swamp Thing story, so I guess we'll get to Swamp Thing at some point too. Yeah. So yes, Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
You guys like Swamp Thing?
Yeah.
Don't make me waste all that work for nothing.
We're also drawing Swamp Things on the variant covers for Justice League Dark, so you can pick those up.
Yeah. And those are fun. I like the look, the beard, the dreadlocks.
Oh yeah.
Very cool looking. Very cool looking.
This question is for James. I'm a really big fan of your Red Hood run, and so I was wondering with that next race coming up, will Red Hood be involved? Will there be a dynamic there with that, just because that's something that I was personally.
That's a great question for those who didn't hear. He was asking about basically are there plans for Red Hood in the future, and I can definitely say yes. I know that one of the last conversations I had with Dan, I'm not personally involved, but he was telling me like what they have planned for Jason, and I was like, oh, that's the most exciting idea that I've heard with that. Like, I love that character. Jason is a character. There might be a pitch in someone's inbox of a Jason story I want to tell, maybe back when he was Robin, but I don't know if that's a sure bet yet, but I love the character. I had my chance to do my big Tim Drake story, and even though I wrote Red Hood and the Outlaws for a bit, it was in a weird moment for Jason because he was brain wiped for most of it. So I still haven't told my the big Jason Todd story in my head. But yeah.
They have a really cool role for him coming. It's like a really interesting thing that feels, why didn't anyone think of that? But it's really natural to his kind of heroism. It's really cool. Yeah.
So along that line, it's always intrigued me these last few years, now that we have so many Robins and y'all working with the Bat family and all the various characters of the Bat family. Talk a little bit about, the various threads of the Robins, and weaving them together in the stories that
well, I think, Grant, when he created Tynion, really changed the game, because having a natural born son that is a Robin until he
cool trained.
Yeah, well, and he's incredible. I mean, that character. It's funny because at first I really avoided writing that character, mostly because Pete was doing it in Batman and Robin, and also because Grant was sort of doing it at the same time, and I felt Batman was the only book where you didn't see him. But deep down, it was hard because my son is the same. I have a son who's now 11. Was 8, 9, 10. While Damien was 10, and it just was really close. And now I'm really fallen in love with writing a character, but he changed it with that character, and I think for us, it almost needs Damien in some way to either, until he moves out of the role of being Robin, it's very hard to sort of create, I think, a new Robin beside him because he's so definitively connected to Bruce. But the family of Robins, I mean, it's one of the greatest parts about writing Batman is you can bring in your love for that whole family. I mean, I love writing Dick Grayson, Jason, Tim, Stephanie, all of it. So
the Requiem run, with all the past Robins then coming back around Damien's apparent death is really.
It's a really interesting tradition, the Robin tradition, in that sense of Batman. I never felt that it was something that was so dark or whatever. The idea that he brings in, he wants to be a parent when his parents were taken away, and he wants to pass on the best of himself in a way that he won't admit to himself because his mortality is kind of his biggest, enemy. And then he's going to get old. He's not going to be able to do what he does forever, and he won't admit that. But so I mean, it's an endlessly rich mythology, and they're all a lot of fun to write.
Yeah. No, I've made my whole career working on Robins. I love those characters, more than I can say. But it's, they each speak to a different aspect of Bruce, and they can each like Bruce is such a he can be like such a tough character, and a character that doesn't let his emotions out very easily. But you get that full emotional picture from him, seeing him interact with each of the different Robins and his relationships with each of them. That's part of what I wanted to do in my detective run, but also in one of the last issues, like right before my final arc, I did an issue 975 that let me play with the core Bat family, just the Robins and Barbara Gordon Batgirl, and it's just like there's a real power to that original group of characters, because they have the strongest connections. They are the Bat family, like, underlined and capitalized.
Do you think we'll ever get a Ninja Turtle style book with the 4 Robins?
I would love that.
We pitch this all the time.
Yeah. Robins with an S, like 5 different times.
Oh my god, yeah. It was what we pitched it every year, like Robins, and they always shoot it down. Or like we put the Night Fight. That
Oh,
was
yeah,
awesome.
Night Fight.
Yeah. You might see that one.
Yeah.
The more we're there, I feel like we inch it closer.
Yeah.
We're just gonna wear them down with it. Just wear them down. But I love that. I love both of those. They're really similar. It's like, but it's Night Fight.
I think this is going to be the last question.
Oh, okay.
You right there. No, you and yeah.
Okay, so about your comment on like the toy box. Recently in Rebirth, you've been bringing back a lot of pre-New 52 stuff. Is that stuff you really enjoy doing? I don't know if anyone cares if I spoil Detective, like really recent. Anyone?
Go for it.
You brought back Cassandra Cain Batgirl, which is one of my favorite runs, like just as a series, and like made me really happy.
Yeah, no, honestly, one of the big things I wanted to do right at the end of my run is, even though like it's not pulling that immediately into like continuity, but it's proving that it exists in the same like idea space and all of that. It is like they are now, both Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain are now aware that there was a version of this timeline in which they were Batgirls. And that sort of shows that, like, yes, they are a part of this mythology, and honestly helps them sort of move forward, like, because that means that they're not coming into this from the outside, they're coming at it from the inside. They understand that they were supposed to be a part of it from the beginning, even though like some of that history isn't immediately brought back. I love doing that stuff. I love tapping into the stories that mattered the most to me growing up. I'm going to continue doing it in Justice League Dark. Like, the first Justice League Dark story to me is it was in Alan Moore's saga of the Swamp Thing, and it's the Great Darkness. It's the storyline where John Constantine is responsible for Zatara's death and all of that. I love tapping into the stories that made me love the characters, and and while I never want to make it so dependent on those pieces that it becomes like incomprehensible to someone who wasn't there and wasn't reading them, I love putting in the pieces that made me love the characters.
Yeah, that's what I'd say too, is just as a closing note to you guys again, I mean, we really feel like I've been at DC almost 10 years this coming year, which is crazy when I think about it. I was sitting with Dan, I know, right? That's crazy, because I started working on American Vampire in 2009, and it came out early 2010, so it was crazy. But I was saying that to Dan, and he was like, literally cursed. He was like, shut the fuck up. I was like, I'm really been there that long. He was like, I'm so old. You are, but anyway. Now give me Robins. No. But what we're trying to do right now, my time at DC, I've seen it go in different directions, to be honest. Like, there were times when we needed to bring in new people, and there were times when we needed to reconnect with older fans. And right now, I really feel like it is genuinely on my kids, like, poised to be the best era of DC Comics in a long time, because not only have we done those things, but now Dan and them are giving us the latitude to tell stories that bring in all these characters in ways that are emotional and immersive and connected. So like the first page of Justice League has like Justice League 1 million and Commandy. and like the quintessence, and like that's how much fun we can have, you know. And it's similar to go back to Batman, the stuff Tom has planned about connecting to the Bat family and the stuff that happens post wedding and his whole